not taking that warning that got him shot, and he's using the warning shots instead of screaming at the guy, "Get away from me or I'll shoot you." There's a myth out there that warning shots can never be seen as evidence that the victim wasn't in fear of his life. Have you ever seen one of these go this direction, where
I have not.
The warning shots
with the warning shot
were brought up? They're usually brought up by the prosecution,
right?
And people go to jail for firing warning shots that, you know, because this guy was unarmed and so forth, but we got a big age difference and so forth. Most instructors don't recommend warning shots. I don't know any law enforcement agency that allows warning shots. When I was teaching police academies for various agencies, that was the rule. Never, never, never fire a warning shot, because you don't know where the bullet's going. Every bullet hits something. And we all, you know, we've done all that lecture forever and ever, and heard that lecture every time you've been to firearms training. Here they're offered as proof of restraint by the shooter.
Yeah, that's a good argument.
And and it shows. Yeah. Granted, first we got to understand the 60-year-old, of course, should have called the police following the shooting instead of jumping in his car and driving away. It would have saved him 20 months in jail.
Absolutely.
When he runs, it looks to the
always
police,
look guilty when you run.
Did something wrong. You know, so stay put and call your lawyer, you know, is what we tell you.
And, you know, kind of the caveat to that is, it sounds like he was in his house, in his apartment. The threat was neutralized. He was no longer in danger. Call the cops and wait. If you're out someplace, maybe the guy at the ATM, you shoot, maybe the threat is neutralized, maybe it's not. You may need to, in order to stay safe, you may need to leave. If you do, don't go very far. Find an open store, convenience store, hide somewhere, call the police and say, look, I had to leave because the danger was still there. I didn't want to shoot anymore. So I'm hiding. Here I am. I'll be here until you get here.
But he's looking, the guy's in his apartment and he shot him dead. And oh my God, I'm in trouble. And he ran.
Right.
And that's just normal human panic. If you're involved in a shooting, that's going to be the first thing you think of. I got to leave, but don't drive to Kansas. You know what you need to do.
Well, that's the other thing. He went to a whole nother state, which brings up all kinds of different problems.
Yeah, he crossed the state line. He was arrested by the other police, and they had to extradite him. And you know, voluntarily came back, of course. But the guy, I don't know what he did for an attorney. But when they went to trial, some people jumped in on this and supplied money for an attorney after he was in jail all this time.
Right. Somebody
realized he was still there and never been to trial. Some of the gun fanciers, I guess, in this area got together. Dean Weingarten didn't detail of who it was, but NRA type organizations went, wait a minute, you know, this guy's been in jail all this time. And they were just concerned that he was in jail all this time without going to trial. He's 20 months. You can't make bail.
Okay, well, 20 months on a murder case is not that long.
Yeah.
You know, that's actually pretty good, because in a murder case, you want to make sure you get everything right as a defense attorney and have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed. And, you know, the news in Las Vegas is real famous for whining about how long it takes murder cases here to go to trial. But you know, when you have a client who's the rest of his life is at stake, you know, 20 months, 36 months is not that long a time.
Well, here's a guy who's 62-year-old. He's I don't know what his health is. Doesn't say. He obviously still drives and so forth. So he don't do this. They set a very high bail because he ran.
Yep.
And you know, the result is going to be the same. They're going to catch you eventually. I mean, this guy left his house, all his possessions, drove away in his car. They had the plate. You know, it's on some. He was caught. Some cop in Kansas was driving around with his scanner running that pulls license plates and runs them on the computer. And there's the plate. So he pulls the guy over and says, "You're under arrest." I go, okay, and he wasn't dangerous to anybody, but he's listed as armed, dangerous. He'd murdered a guy and fled. So you got a very hot stop. It took a lot of risk getting shot then by the police.
Sure.
And yet he was so innocent that it took the jury less than an hour. It takes 20 minutes at least to pick a foreman.
Yeah, pick a foreman. If it's around lunchtime, you got to get that free lunch in. And
surrender yourself without your gun. Of course, he had the gun in the car when he was stopped. He had another gun in the car, the same gun.
Yeah, I mean, by calling the police, and especially in his apartment where he was no longer in danger, calling the police and waiting would have saved him for sure 20 months in jail. 20
months in jail and all his heartache that he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison.
And he's lucky, like you said, that the stop and the takedown by the Kansas police was not much more violent.
Yeah. And I'm sure they drug him out of the car and put him on the ground and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
Get backup units and so forth, because he's a fugitive wanted for a murder.
Yeah. And they don't know the circumstances behind it at that time. So.
And he was just a nice guy, and he's just running because he's scared. There's a real tendency to do that. But as Clark said, if you want to leave the scene because you're worried about the guy's friends, gangbangers, whatever, or the guy, he's wounded and he ran off, he may be coming back, whatever, go hide someplace, call the police.
Yeah.
There's nothing to it. If you're not a murderer, they are actually your friend. They like to get the bad guys. Reminder that we have concealed carry permit classes here at the gun store every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. They are free except for the qualification ammunition. You can find where to sign up on our website, thegunstorelasvegas.com, and get yourself some training in how to safely use your firearm and not do things like that cause you to be in jail for 20 months.
Yes.
So it's, that's really tough. I mean, this guy just doesn't understand the system, and he lived on bologna sandwiches, or maybe they're better food in their jails.
Right.
Probably not. Albuquerque, New Mexico on the 8th. This is the 12th. Homeowner in Albuquerque shot and killed 2 people Monday just before 10 p.m. They were called to his neighbors did and talked to him, talked to reporters about what happened and what they saw and so forth and so on. And it's, I don't want to break this from the middle. I'm going to have to, because we're going to have to break for some commercial stuff here on the radio program. Now we are broken. We'll be right back if you're listening on KDON. If you're watching on YouTube, then we're still here, and we're going to diddle around until we get our audience back from the radio show. This is a tough case. Anyway, this was a neighbor talking to the police, and we'll talk about that. I don't want to get into it without the other folks who now just can't hear us. So this would have been a good spot to put the thing in about the Class 3 warning.
Yeah.
But I didn't. Let's see what else I got. I can stick in here. We are, I'm going to talk to everybody about that. Regal Theaters. I want to talk about everything. I don't have anything that's really not kind of a cool story tonight. Lots of stuff. For those of you who were trying to watch us on And the audience voted 100% for Donald Trump just now, if you missed that.
Right.
The audience, don't giggle, please. But then I can get him on the show. I know Marco Rubio will come on and so on, and we can get people to, like I said, the 100% of the audience at the moment is a fan of
he is funny.
Donald. Yes, he is.
He is funny.
And we're having the Democratic debate at the Wynn Hotel, directly in between the two most conservative hotels.
Right.
Welcome back to Fired Up with Bob Irwin.
We're back. My engineering staff said,
And not a minute too late.
not a minute, yes. We are, let me go back to this story in Albuquerque. The police got a call for a home invasion. They showed up, and the people that did the shooting in defense didn't talk to them, which is a good thing. You don't gain anything talking to the press. We have warned about that. You really want to, but don't do that. They did talk to the KOB Eyewitness News crew, and two neighbors came over. They lived directly behind the home where the shooting happened. The neighbors were sitting on their porch when this took place. I heard somebody go into the house, and after that, I heard 3 shots. I dove on the ground. He said he and his wife were among the first people to come running to check on their neighbor. They just heard a couple gunshots, got curious because we heard somebody crying. So I climbed up the stairs to look over the fence to see who was crying and if they needed help. They said the woman at the house and the homeowner were both in tears. There was a gentleman standing in the doorway, and I said, "Are you guys okay?" The neighbor said that he said, "I had to shoot them. I didn't want to shoot them. They were breaking down my door, so I shot them," and he was crying. It's scary because we want this to be a safe neighborhood. This is the neighbor talking again. And if it was a home invasion, that scares us too. The Albuquerque police said one person died at the scene, one died being transported to the local hospital. The homeowner is being questioned by the police as to what happened, but is not considered a suspect at this time. There might have been a third party that drove away and left the other 2 guys, which
Typical.
it usually happens, but your friends will not drag you to the hospital. They'll leave you there, so make sure you know your getaway driver. Not getting into whether it was, obviously it's a good shooting, they're breaking through the guy's door, but the trauma involved here is what everybody goes through, and rarely do news stories contain that information.
Right.
And real world defense takes an incredible toll on you. If somebody is killed, in this case 2 people, you need to seek professional counseling to get your head straight.
Yes.
This is a life-changing event. We deal with police all the time that now you get a week off. They force you to counseling, et cetera, because they found the post-traumatic stress is horrible. And the police are a little better off because they get training in advance about this.
Right.
And this
That's
is
just what I was going to say, is that, you know, they're out there, and that's unfortunately part of their job sometimes, and so they get the training, but for a homeowner or somebody like this that has never had any training and doesn't expect it, it can be much worse.
And they're apparently, the article didn't give their ages. The police released nothing about them to keep the press away from them, which is a good thing.
Yes.
This is a horrible thing to go through, and it is an absolute life-changing event. And I don't want to tell you, let yourself be killed, because you're going to suffer a lot of psychological trauma, but you are. And first, save your own life. But you have to be aware that your life will change dramatically because of these events, if there's something like this happens. Particularly if your opponent is killed.
Yes.
It's much worse. Because he's not there to tell his side of the story, and his father and his mother and his cousin will say he was turning his life around. He was starting to go to USC the next day, and you know all this rigmarole they put you through, like you killed a nice guy.
Right.
who just happened to be breaking into your house at the time. Dayton, Ohio. Victim of a Wednesday morning shooting is identified as a 22-year-old male from Detroit. He died of a gunshot wound to the chest. More interesting story here. Police said a woman shot a man in self-defense as he entered her home on Richmond Avenue Wednesday morning at around 4:10 a.m. Officers and paramedics were dispatched to the home after a man was reported shot. Dayton police said the woman inside the home first called police after hearing the man attempt to break into a second-story window. The man ultimately made entry through that window, confronted the woman before she shot him in self-defense. After being shot, the man fled back out the same window and ran about a block before he collapsed and died. He was, according to the Montgomery County Coroner's Office. The resident woman is currently being questioned by police, but charges against her are not expected. Again, a homicide sergeant at the scene said to the press, "You have a right to protect yourself. If you fear for the safety of yourself and your family, it appears the man was unarmed when he broke into the house."
Not a requirement.
That's the point here. In the dark at 4 a.m., somebody breaks into your house, or 3 a.m., 4 a.m. Is it reasonable for you to fire on them without actually seeing a weapon?
Absolutely.
Of course. You cannot be expected to wait. He's in your house at 4 a.m. You're going to wait till you actually see a gun or see a knife.
Too late.
You can't do that. It is reasonable to fire then. Sometimes giving them a warning, if you're up to that, is fine. You know, we encourage that. Or a warning shot from the previous story. But because your attorney then will say, look, that was her saying, "Get out of my house," loudly. We don't like warning shots in that sense, because sometimes if the bad guy is armed, he thinks you're firing at him and he fires back. So I'd rather use the verbal warnings. But anyway, she's fine. She had a right to protect herself, according to their homicide investigative sergeant. There's a little follow-up to this story that was on Fox 45 in Dayton. That's the same WHIO-TV in Dayton. The Richmond Avenue resident apparently called the police at 3 a.m. after hearing someone trying to break into her house. But on the 911 call, the dispatcher tells the woman to keep an eye out for the officer and call back if you hear anything else. After an hour, the police still hadn't come, but the suspect did. He came back. The Montgomery Sheriff's Office is conducting an employee performance investigation as to why there's such a long delay for police to respond to the woman's 911 call. There was some interesting discussion over this. The police chief apparently said at a press conference he's going to investigate and see what happened. There might have been other more high priority calls that had tied up all his units. And then the reporter said, "What calls do you consider more high priority than a woman in a house by herself at 3 a.m. screaming, 'Somebody's breaking into my house'? Which calls take precedent over that?"
That's a tough one to answer.
Said, yeah.
And it's just another reason why you should be able to protect yourself, because who knows why, or if they'll ever find out why it took them an hour to respond.
And they're investigating it, and they're it's kind of the gun store employee system looking for the employee to blame. Why didn't you stay on the phone with her, et cetera, et cetera.
But if she did not have the ability to defend herself, what would happen in that hour?
The dispatcher's probably going to be fired over this, because the reality is, we get that here with Metro on middle of the night. They're on skeleton crews on graveyard and so forth. The nearest unit might be 10 miles away.
Sure.
So at lights and siren, he's 4 minutes from your house.
Right.
You start somebody that way. If there's no units, we can call somebody from Nye County and have them send it.
Right, yeah.
You always get somebody on the way just in case. And in this particular instance, they didn't. and it's apparently the error of the dispatcher. That's who they're blaming at the moment. But it always takes several minutes for the police to arrive.
And, through no fault of the police metro here, now they're all required to ride 2 in a car, which basically cuts the coverage in half, because when you're running one officer in the car, you got twice the people.
Instead of getting one guy there in 2 minutes, you get two guys in 4 minutes.
So, and I mean, and nobody's certainly faulting Metro for that because of what's been going on in Las Vegas the last couple of weeks. But it's just more reason why you need to be able to defend yourself while you're waiting for them.
If someone kicks through your front door, how long a delay have you got for the police to get there? 0. They're in your house.
Yeah.
I mean, there is no dwell time. If you call 911 or somebody calls 911, by the time it gets through dispatch, they figure out which unit's closest, which is all computerized. They're really quick now, getting that unit en route. But if he's at the end of the block, he's going to arrive at your house 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes after you call. If he's at the end of your block, 2.5 to 3 minutes, you're dead. You have to be able to defend yourself. If you don't have a gun in your house, have a gun in your house. You don't have to like guns. You don't like fire extinguishers, but you have one of those, right? I'm harping at the same thing every show. Want to mention the gun store. We are lead free. If you want to bring your family down here and kids and so forth, you're welcome to come and shoot. We will not poison you with lead in our air. We've got some other interesting news I want to kind of run through. We've got about 10 or 11 minutes. Alabama Supreme Court found a law that is in Alabama banning open carry of a gun onto someone else's property is unconstitutional. They had a rule in Alabama that if you carried a gun on somebody else's property, that was a crime. And their state Supreme Court, 5-3, said that's unconstitutional. Now they can tell you, I don't want you here on my property with a gun and you must go away, but it is not a crime to walk on the property. If they don't tell you that people didn't put a sign up or whatever, it's still not a crime unless they tell you in person, take your gun off my property. Even the signs don't mean anything. You need to be told, So anyway, this guy was found guilty in municipal court and ordered to pay fines for violating state law. He appealed to the circuit court, which upheld the decision. That the circuit court, I was going to ask you about this, on his appeal, added a 30-day suspended jail term and 6-month probation.
Wow.
Apparently they can do that.
Evidently, but not on the bill. They can't do that here.
But they were mad, so they gave him more bad stuff. So he appealed to the Alabama Supreme Court, and they let him go and said, no, he doesn't have to do probation or pay the fine or whatever. He said it's unconstitutional. They said it's unconstitutional on its face. There's a lot of stuff I put in here about the case, but basically, the chief judge writing for the dissent contended the city law was correct, but they had insufficient argument for notice of a gun-free zone, and they were getting penalties for violating and so forth. There was no notice in the law that you could go to jail for this. Yeah. It just said you can't do this, but there was no penalty.
No penalty.
So they made a penalty up.
Right, and you can't do that.
Yeah, so it's got to be in there. If it says you can't do this in the law, you look at what the penalty is and you decide whether you want to risk that or not.
Yes.
But they can't just say you can't do that and they'll make up the penalty later.
Right. We don't like you, so this is your penalty.
Selfies. 19-year-old father of 2 dead in Houston, Texas, says KPRC Houston, with a self-inflicted gunshot wound while he was apparently posing for selfies on the social media. His family's in shock. I have a numb feeling this is unbelievable. Yesterday was my birthday, and he came to wish me happy birthday. And then I get this news, said his grandmother. He and his cousin found a gun earlier in the day, and he shot himself in the throat accidentally while in the bathroom with the firearm. The young father, who was set to start community college this week, he's doing a selfie, and he pulled the trigger, apparently. Selfie deaths, injuries are common, as we all know. This isn't a gun thing, but while I was looking at this, there was reference to this other case that I had to throw in. In July, a man in California suffered a snake bite injury. He found a snake in the wild, was some type of rattlesnake. He picked it up, was taking a selfie, and it bit him in the face. He survived, but
Wow.
the hospital's billing him for $153,000 because they have to treat him when he comes in. And this was apparently a self-inflict.
And you know, the famous place for this is Yellowstone Park. All the tourists want a selfie with a bison or a bear.
Yeah.
And they just, you know, go up and let's put Junior on the back of this bear because he's cute.
I just
you know, the Darwin Awards.
Yes. Anyway, this guy's alive, fortunately, good. But don't pick up rattlesnakes and try and take a picture with them. They don't redo selfies. Security is helping us now. Regal Theaters announced nationally. Lots of Regal Theaters here in Las Vegas have become security problem. Regal Entertainment wants its customers and staff to feel comfortable when visiting or working in our theaters. To ensure safety of our guests and employees, backpacks and bags of any kind are subject to inspection prior to admission. We acknowledge this procedure can only cause some inconvenience. It is not without flaws, but we hope these are minor in comparison to your increased safety.
How can you be increased safety when you're not allowed to bring your weapon to protect yourself?
They're only searching bags and backpacks, ladies' purses and backpacks. I mentioned that in a show a couple of weeks ago, and my wife and I went and they searched her purse and didn't find a .38 snub nose that was in her purse, and didn't even ask me. But they're not clear if they're going to make this a gun-free zone by putting up signs that say no guns allowed. If they do that, gun owners might find someplace else.
Yeah, there's plenty of other theaters to go in town besides Regal Theaters.
Because if you can't take your gun, and we've had a number of theater shootings, and the one that in Colorado was a gun-free zone, and there have been a couple since that were gun-free zones. So if they tell you that you can't bring your own gun in, they need to put armed guards on the door and search everybody, or let you carry your gun for self-defense.
If you're going to do something like that, what better place in a gun-free zone when you're reasonably certain that nobody's going to be shooting back?
Sure. Various media in Washington State reported last November passed new gun laws that the individual background checks are now for all sales, including those online or gun shows. There's an exception for emergency transfers for personal safety. Nice. Are gifts between family members, antiques, or loans for hunting. There's a couple of anti-gun groups that were pushing this, and some of the gun guys tried to sue. And that's why I put this in here, Clark, was to ask you, because the court said they have no grounds to sue because they're not being prosecuted for violating.
Correct. The gun rights people that aren't buying guns cannot sue, because in order to have a due process violation, you have to be an injured party, a victim. Yeah, an injured party, a victim. So if they have this law and you don't buy a gun, you can't sue over it because you've not been harmed. There's no damages.
Right. They didn't have a plaintiff.
There's no plaintiff.
Principle. So you have to be harmed by the law before you can, or at least inconvenienced before you have grounds to sue. So the court was correct in telling them they don't have standing. Well, I guess that's fair. I couldn't, your wife beats you up, so I sue your wife because I'm not a victim, so I have no standing.
No, you have to have standing.
You have to sue yourself.
Yeah, exactly. There's no standing there.
I'm trying to annoy our studio audience here. I know. Oh, I got 5 minutes because I got to do this. This is the city of Tacoma, Washington. Don't laugh yet.
Okay.
They've got this program they're putting in. They're voting on it to make some concrete steel bins for people to drop unwanted guns in. If you're like walking down the street and you decide I don't want to have a gun, and you have a gun, you can just drop it in the bin, and then your gun's gone. And they're all in places where police can't videotape who's dropping guns and so forth. So our main intent, said the Tacoma police chief, is to get weapons off the street. He said it's in the planning stages. The Tacoma Police Union said it's not going to be very effective. Are we really expecting people to walk down the street to this drop box with a gun tucked in their shorts and drop it off?
Right.
It doesn't seem to the sergeant that we were interviewing, but that it's a very well thought out thing. The city's gang reduction project coordinator, they actually have one, told KRO Radio that it would just have a drop box, drop the gun off, and later law enforcement would swing by and pick up the gun.
Pick up the gun, sure.
What about gangsters drop by and pick up the entire box?
Yeah.
They're putting these in places where people can't be
There's no videotape.
and where the police aren't nearby.
A genuine pickup.
The guy at the corner, yeah, a guy just dropped a gun, and okay, and they run down and grab it. One of the police they interviewed said one would think an unwanted gun could be dropped off a bridge over Puget Sound like they do now with unwanted guns.
Yeah, there's
that's where they put their crime guns, is
sure.
in Puget Sound. So this is one, I'm quoting them now, a police officer. This is one really stupid taxpayer expensive idea. If you like this idea and you have an unwanted gun, we can translate this to Las Vegas. You can bring the gun into the gun store here on East Tropicana, just set it on the counter and walk away, and we'll run it, see if it's stolen, and whatever. But you can anonymously drop one off here. That's probably illegal for me saying that, but if you do, you drop a gun on the counter, we can't really detain you.
Right, yeah.
So, feel free. If you've got a gun you don't want, we'll give you $10 for it. You can actually make money dropping off unwanted guns, and the gun store will do that. We will do that
as a community service.
As a community service to make our streets safer. You can turn in your unwanted guns to the gun store. Another community service. Upcoming gun show, Sports Center is going to be October 17 and 18. We will be there selling our brass. I wanted to make a note, Nevada Firearms Coalition is doing a fundraiser for sporting clay shoot out at Pro Gun Club on October 23rd. You may contact Michelle at 702-591-7455 for information. They have guns for rent, but you go out there, you pay a fee to shoot, and the money goes to several pro gun things, including the Nevada Firearms Coalition, which is doing good work. You should be a member if you're listening to us. Look up Nevada Firearms Coalition on the web, NVFAC. October 30th at Venetian Hotel, the Keystone Annual Dinner, which is a conservative group. We'll be having Dana Perino, who's on Fox News Show The Five. If you would like ticket information, drop me an email. I'm on their board of directors, bob@firedupmail.com, the same address, and I will put you in touch to get tickets. There next week, we have Defense Attorney Brian Hardy coming on the show for the first time. He will be with us to answer questions and things like that. And one last note, there's a big movie coming up called The Big Short. It's about stock brokerage, or speculation on real estate, and a group that took advantage of all of the bubble in the housing market and so forth, made a lot of money stealing from everybody else. And the movie is called The Big Short. It opens December 15th. We believe, you can look it up on the internet, they think December 15, and it features the gun store because the bad guys that set this up, after they ripped everybody off all day, would come over to the gun store and shoot.
Oh, nice.
So they used our store in the movie.
Very cool.
We will be continuing on YouTube. If you're not watching YouTube, flip over to the gun store, to YouTube, Fired Up with Bob Irwin. And otherwise, we'll be back next week with Attorney Brian Hardy. And thanks for watching us. I think we are gone on KDWN. And we are not gone on YouTube. Is that correct?
Correct.
I'm correct. And there we are. I can see on the monitor we're actually there. See, that's why we look at the camera, which is there, or stuff like that. And then if we were on the other thing, the Periscope, we'd be looking over there to talk to the studio audience, but they're not there. There's only one.
One.
Who's a big supporter of Donald Trump.
Hey, he could run companies. He could run this, guys.
The aforementioned political comment by our audience will be not considered to be the opinion of the host, the staff. I have staff.
You have staff.
You like Trump?
Yeah, we should shut his mouth, but I like him.
So it's just not the opinion of the host.
You like Trump?
Oh, absolutely.
Not for president, maybe. But.
All righty.
We want to talk about a separate issue here. We are having a huge rise in crime. The murder rates are up in almost all major cities. The administration seems to be convinced that getting guns away from honest people or running background checks on honest people is going to solve this problem. There's a many page article that I pulled for background on this, but homicides in the major cities, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., St. Louis, etc., are up. There's a few cities where they're down. One is New York City. They are down from what they were. And one of them is Detroit, where they're down. Virtually everybody else is up. In looking at the news and getting through this stuff at Metro, we're running 5, 6, 7 shootings a day here in Las Vegas, and 1 or 2 or 3 make the news, because the newscast really can't just be one shooting after the other. They have to get in their, there are other stories about things that are going right. We just had a shooting over here at Tropicana and Boulder Highway in the shopping center that they're still looking for the guy that apparently 3 guys got into a beef with one other guy. He left, came back with his gun and shot 3 people or 2 people. He shot. 2 died, I believe, in that, and 1 there and 1 at the hospital. And they're still looking for the guy because it's a gang thing, and they're afraid of saying, "Yeah, I saw it. It was Freddie." They've got numerous witnesses to it, as there are to most of these things. We have all kinds of programs where you can call and at least tell the police who did it anonymously.
Secret witness,
Crime Stoppers. They really are secret witness. You can call from your stolen cell phone and nobody will know who it was.
or if you can find a payphone.
Because, at least then the police know who they're looking at, and then they can find evidence whether the guy was actually there and this and that and the other thing.
Right.
But the police departments cannot stop this on their own. And as with the stories out of Detroit and so on, people are jumping in and defending themselves. That's a separate issue. You need to defend yourself, obviously. Letting the gangbangers kill you doesn't reduce the crime rate. It doesn't reduce the homicide rate.
Just kind of, since we're talking about this, and I don't know, I don't have any figures, or just because all I do is homicides, and it seemed like the first part of the year was actually pretty slow, and we were actually down receiving new clients. But in the last 2-3 months, it's really seemed to have picked up.
Huge.
Yeah. So, it's not even, from my point of view, it hasn't even been all of 2015. It's just been the summer of 2015.
Yeah. The sheriff was on the other day giving a press conference about the officers being, Metro now running, most areas are running 2 men in a car because they've been shot at so much. And he emphasized that it's not a war on Metro. These are individual incidents, et cetera, et cetera. But Sheriff, I've got to disagree. No, it isn't a war on Metro. It's a war on police. Right. They're being shot at all over the country. Yes. And I realize you want to say it's not a war on Metro, and at the same time, you're doubling up the number of officers that are there to protect each other, which they have to be. It's just people are shooting at the police like it's a sport, and that is part of the whole thing with the crime rate, because we're not prosecuting people that deserve to be prosecuted. There's no room in the jails. They let people go, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, on and on. The lady in San Francisco is now suing the police chief up there, the family of the woman that was killed by the illegal alien. There was another one in Miami, same thing.
Right.
And it's the same exact thing. The ICE agent said, well, we asked them to hold him, but they can't hold him forever. We're not paying for it.
Well, in San Francisco, they won't even hold him. That's,
Well, she's suing the city, county, the sheriff, the city council, everybody, which should be.
Should be, yes.
And, it maybe in 2 years, I don't know if you can sue the police department. We've had those cases where you can't sue the police department for failing to protect you as an individual. They only have a duty to protect the public. But her attorneys are suing under, they're not protecting the public.
Right.
There's a conspiracy between ICE and the police department.
Well, yeah, because San Francisco is
known criminals out on the street because of this.
Known criminal, but because he's not non-documented or illegal, they let him out and they won't hold him.
Sanctuary.
Yeah, sanctuary city.
And that's exactly right. That is not protecting the city.
No, and when they do that, we're being kind of a sanctuary city here. I know we're not, but when groups want to do protest marches and whatnot, we block off streets for them. We tell them you need a permit to do that, and they go, I don't need a permit. That it's their right to free expression. That's a different thing than murderers and child molesters and so forth. And that Donald Trump brought that up. There are a lot of people slipping through that should not stay here, and they're here and they're causing a lot of crime. And the police, because they're being shot at, because they're being sued every time they turn around, are now less aggressive going after bad guys.
Right.
I got to ask you about the case while I have you here. The Freddie Gray case. The city apparently voted to pay to the Freddie Gray's family $6 million,
6.3, I believe it was,
for his, the family's grief and suffering, whatever. They haven't even sued the city yet. There is no pending litigation.
Right.
They are planning to, but they're waiting for the criminal case to come out. So now we're going to have 6 separate cases for those police officers.
Yeah.
They don't want to move it out of the area because they can obviously get a fair trial. There hasn't been any pretrial publicity.
Yeah, absolutely not.
So and so on. The city is paying them money when nobody's asked the city for money.
Well,
I've never heard of that.
And I mean, I'm sure there's plenty going on behind the scenes. The Freddie Gray's family has an attorney and probably came up to the city and said, here's the thing. We can settle this quietly and quick, or we can file the lawsuit and drag this out in front of the media again for another 3 years. And it's a common practice in personal defense, or not personal defense, personal injury law, where before a lawsuit's filed, your attorney will call,
We'll offer someone like
and
that.
say, look, we'll settle instead of filing a lawsuit, because in the long run, it could save a lot of money. It's easier for the attorneys, and it saves the city or the insurance company money by settling early. So,
So that's not unprecedented.
It's not unprecedented. And it's, the Gray's attorney got in touch with the city and said, we'll take this.
You got this case you're going to lose,
Yeah.
and therefore, and the city said, well, we probably will, so we'll offer you this.
Exactly, because, they say, we'll take X, and the city says, no, you can go to a jury trial, and you don't know what kind of jury you get, and the $6 million could have looked pretty good to the city if they get the jury that gives the Gray family $25 million. So,
Well, yeah, and I can see that happening if that's where they have the trial.
Exactly.
You've got, the prosecutor and whatever is the mayor, who's now announced she's not going to rerun for office because she wants to spend her time seeing that Freddie Gray's family is compensated properly.
exactly. So, yeah, the city, that may have been actually a very good financial decision by the city to do that.
Could well have been. I can't see them winning the case anyway.
No.
But I cannot also imagine that all 6 officers are going to be held liable. Some of them came into the whole thing very late.
Very late.
And
I'm sure that there'll be several of them that do some kind of plea bargains or deals because of that, because, especially going to trial in that city, like you say, getting a jury is going to be tough, and you could certainly do a lot worse by letting 12 angry people.
Yeah, but those are criminal cases they're looking at. I mean, it's just, I can't imagine that, I'm sure, well, they've already been turned down, the change of venue request.
Right.
But I got to imagine that can go higher up in the court system.
Yeah, it can.
It's,
And, the amount of publicity certainly makes it a prime candidate to move.
publicity? Really? It's unfortunate the guy was killed, and we're not going to know what really happened until there is a trial, because everybody is posturing and
Yeah.
so forth and so on. And I just.
But, the publicity is kind of a two-edged sword for him, because the opposition would be, well, this is on national news. It's this public everywhere. There's nowhere that hasn't heard of this. So unless you plan on, taking this trial out to the middle of North Dakota,
I'm
It
sure
doesn't
that's
matter.
where they'd love to do it. Anyway, the streets are getting very dangerous, and we're rolling all this into a giant problem, because we've got an administration in Washington that is pursuing this as everything in the world has become a racial issue.
right.
And it absolutely drives me crazy. The officers involved in the Freddie Gray case, did we notice that 3 of them were black? And 3
Well,
were white?
they don't talk about those 3.
Why don't they let the 3 black guys off because they wouldn't do,
Right.
The world is not based on race, and each case should stand on its own. I go out of my way on this show not to say, so-and-so, the black suspect did this. If it isn't germane to the case, that his race means something in the case, I
It
never
doesn't
do.
matter. Yeah.
I blank it out all the time, but virtually every story that I pick up from the news media.
Well, and that's the thing with the news media. They absolutely do not care if they're putting out the truth. They only care to put out what gets subscribers or listeners or advertisers.
Well, when I pull stories, commonly it's, a liquor store robbery. 2 men came in, tried to open a liquor store. The owner of the liquor store fired 2 rounds and they ran away. It doesn't say that. It says 2 black males came in to rob a liquor store, and the white or Hispanic, whoever, owner fired so many shots. And you look at the situation, and it's a robbery, and the races of the people involved have absolutely no bearing on whether it's a rightful shooting, wrongful shooting,
Right.
good use of force, bad use of force. And yet, all of these stories lead now with the races of the individuals. And you're just pounding more stuff. Look,
Yeah.
2 more black people got killed, 2 more black young men, you know. No, the black young men were robbing the store. If there were white young men, and I found those cases where it's 2 white guys and the black owner shoots them. They don't mention race in those
no,
when they do the
absolutely
stories.
not.
And this is the national media. This is CNN. This is so and so on. And you know, it annoys me. I watch Scott Pelley, and he'll talk about. You remember he said when the guy had his hands up, and no, he didn't have his hands up when he was shot. Going
Right.
back to the Ferguson case, and that was adjudicated by everybody: the FBI, the Justice Department, the jury, the police. You know, we had more hearings and trials
Right.
than you could shake a stick at. And in all cases, they said, no, he didn't have his hands up. He was reaching in the car, trying to grab the officer's gun. And yet, just 3 or 4 days ago, when on national news, again, it said, when the young black man with his hands in the air was killed.
Because they're not looking for the truth. They're looking for ratings.
And they want everybody to get involved.
Right.
Get off the race thing, folks. We are all Americans, and this needs to be handled like adults of whatever color you would like. Lots of crime out there. Have a gun. If you don't have a gun, get one. Get one here, preferably at the gun store. Get one wherever you want. Learn how to shoot it safely. And God bless you, and God bless America. And remember yesterday, the people who were killed in the World Trade Center fiasco. Our heart goes out still to their families. We've been at war with terrorism for quite a while now. So we'll be back next week. Have a good evening.
Night.
Good night.